Well, welcome to Northern Light Spiritual Center. Northern Light Spiritual Center is a community of practical principles to create lives we want to live. Northern Light Spiritual Center offers practical and spiritual tools to make positive changes in our lives. We at Northern Light Spiritual Center acknowledge our presence here on the traditional and unceded ancestral lands of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish and Salish peoples. These people are still here, and we join with them in how they continue to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. We seek to resist the erasure of Indigenous histories as we work towards honoring and inviting the truth. Please join me for our opening song, In This Very Room, by Carol and Ron Harris. In this very room, there's quite enough love for all the world. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all the world. And there's quite enough peace and quite enough power to walk through our every fear. For Spirit, sweet Spirit, is in this very room. In this very room.
Good morning. And now's the time we set aside for a brief but important meditation. An important time of the morning where we take a moment to just be still and know. So I invite you right now just to try to get as comfortable as you can wherever you are in the outer lands of the universe. And let's just breathe in a nice deep breath. Breathe it all the way down into your solar plexus, feeling your stomach full of air. And release. And it's okay to make a sound as you release. And let's inhale. Hold it. And release. And one more time. Inhale. Hold it. And release. And so as we focus this morning on just being present in the now, in this moment, releasing any and everything that has come before this instant. Whether you woke up on time, whether you woke up in a good mood, whether you have 1,000 things to do later, just be present, right here and right now, and allow yourself to connect with the divine inside. That divine spirit that lives, breathes, and moves within you. So just allow yourself to connect to that inner voice and just be. if you need more information from what your inner voice is telling you, just ask it. Say, I need more information. I invite you to thank your inner voice for connecting and for communicating with you. And remember that you can do this any time of the day, night. And I invite you to do this randomly. When things get anxious and upset or worried or frustrated or just out of sync. Allow yourself to go within and connect with that divine within. So I just invite you to move your fingers and toes, and when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to your space, knowing that your space is a sacred space, and so it is. And so for this morning's meditation, I'm going to share with you a bit of a talk from Reverend Mykal Beckwith.
Visioning is catching an idea outside of your present paradigm so that you're making yourself receptive to the spiritual idea that the universe wants to birth through you that you may not know about. In other words, you may be enculturated by your society, by your religion. In the Western world, we have all these models of success. You're successful if you have a house, 2 kids, a bigger fence, 2 cars. You know, people get that and they're not happy. But someone could visualize that and manifest it and realize, oh my God, I'm still unhappy. Visioning is different. Visioning begins with a spiritual idea that there is planted within each and every one of us a powerful destiny, a powerful, unique way that the universe wants to express itself. So instead of telling the universe what we want, we instead ask a question. What is the universe's idea of my life? We begin to catch that idea. What is my growing edge? What must I become to manifest that vision? What do I already have in my house that I can use to serve the vision? What must I let go of? What does willingness look like? We ask a different kind of question because here's a hierarchy of questions. Behind every problem, there's a question trying to ask itself. The universe being progressive. Behind every question, there's an answer trying to reveal itself. Behind every answer, there's an action trying to take place. And behind every action, there's a way of life trying to be born. So a problem to answer that. After it answers that, it'll start to give you an action to take. And then it'll birth itself into a way of living. So visioning begins with the question. You can say, what is God's idea of itself as my life? So another analogies are poor sometimes to use, but if an acorn were to go into the visioning process, it would say, what is God's idea of itself as my life? It would begin to see an oak tree. An oak tree that had never existed before. An oak tree that is so unique that there would be no other oak tree like it. And it would say, well, what do I need to become for this oak tree to manifest? Well, you're going to have to die to your littleness. The acorn's going to have to crack open. It's going to have to be planted in the right condition. It's going to have to let go of its smallness. It's going to have to embrace the infinite field of divine possibility within its soul. Eventually, the condition is right. It becomes an oak tree. There are things within us that we have no idea that are even there, because we've been indoctrinated by the society in which we are living. A high-tech, low-touch society. Consumerism, materialism, fear, doubt, worry. And so we visualize what we think we want to be happy. Nothing wrong with that. But beyond that is a gift, a talent, a capacity within us all that's trying to emerge. Robert Browning indicated, there's an inner splendor, that's trying to escape. So the visioning process invites the inner splendor to come up that may shock our surface mind. It may surprise us as to what's trying to emerge and what we must become. And now,
So it is.
So we have a new month, the month of March, and with it we have a new theme and we have a new chant. So the theme for this month is open to possibilities. Open to possibilities through visioning. And the chant goes, I open to all possibility, accepting all that can be. I join with creation, creating. I open my eyes to see. Spirit's highest idea of it living as me. Life's generosity, giving as me. Let this vision shine for me. Yes, let this vision shine for me. So please sing along if you'd like, or be sung to, whichever you prefer. I open to all possibility, accepting all that can be. I join with creation, creating. I open my eyes to see Spirit's highest idea of it living as me. Life's generosity, giving as me. Let this vision shine from me. Yes, let this vision shine from me. Now you open to all possibilities, accepting all that can be. You join with creation, creating. You open your eyes to see Spirit's highest idea of of it, living as you. Life's generosity, giving as you. Let this vision shine from you. Let this vision shine from you. Now we open to all possibility, accepting all that can be. We join with creation, creating. We open our eyes to see Spirit's highest idea of it living as us. Life's generosity, living as us. Let this vision shine from us. Yes, let this vision shine from us. Now back to I. I open to all possibility, accepting all that can be. I join with creation, creating. I open my eyes to see Spirit's highest idea of it living as me. Life's generosity, giving as me. Let this vision shine from me. Yes, let this vision shine from me.
Spirit fly
Well, welcome back. My name is Reverend Vaughan Amaré, and today's talk we're looking at living in the question: what is Spirit's highest idea of itself as my life? In the Science of Mind teachings, in the Centers for Spiritual Living, we believe several things. One of those things is that we all have access to direct revelation of divine wisdom. That infinite wisdom exists, and that because it exists in time and space. And we all have the means, we all have the ways to contact that, to be in contact with that. And in contact with that, we all have means of expressing it. We all have access to all wisdom, all light, all perfection, all knowledge. It's as close as our breath. Take that in for just a moment. What is possible when we believe that? Rather than thinking of ourselves as limited, separated beings that are just floating through this world, floating through our lives. What if rather than floating, we are so connected to life itself? Then all the times that we feel anxious, all the times that we feel that life is just too much and that the circumstances are just outside of control, what becomes available if we can just let ourselves lean into the notion that there is a wisdom that is upholding it all? Now, I'm not saying that that's easy. It's a simple idea, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. I just propose that that's one of the teachings that this philosophy, that this religious practice lets us propose and lets us live from. One of the things about this teaching that Ernest Holmes created, he called it Science of Mind, was that it's a science. And science is about hypothesis and trying things on. So what happens if we try that on? We're so ready to try on other things. We're so ready to try on that life sucks. We're so ready to try on the notion that we live in a world full of evil, nasty people, and that we just have to kind of survive our way in the midst of evil, nasty people. How many people have tried that one on? I know that I've definitely tried that on. I know that right now, as the school district that I work for is pressing that its most vulnerable and hardest to find teachers, that you're just going to get the hell back to work, and we really don't care. We've got everything safe for you, except in actual buildings it isn't safe, and people know that. And the district isn't saying that it isn't safe because that sounds bad to parents. That sounds bad to families. So it sounds much more reassuring to say, we have everything under control. When in fact, I know that at my own building, there are ways into the building that are not where you sign in. There are ways into the building that lots of people know about. Anyhow, that's just an example of how it is that I can separate myself from that belief. Another thing that is proposed as a belief, as a hypothesis to try on, is that heaven is not some future reward after we have all attempted to live a good life. Heaven is not the outcome of good living. That heaven is a state of being that we can engage in right here and now. That heaven, just like divine wisdom and divine light and divine intelligence is as close as our breath, that heaven is within us now. So just take a moment Just take this moment right here and now and breathe that in. I am in heaven. And if I am in heaven, do I let all of the things that are in heaven with me annoy the living crud out of me? If I let myself see myself being in heaven, maybe I can take this heavenly moment when my little dog is just all excited, and I can let that be a heavenly moment. That I can lean into the delight of this little being. I know that Reba has her little beloved one, and sometimes it doesn't feel beloved, but her little dog always loves her. There is never a time that it is not truly loving her presence. I invite us to just take a moment and think of when we have been loved. Without any condition, without any expectation, that we do not have to satisfy a to-do list to be loved. Just take a moment and think of this. Allow ourselves to feel the feeling of what it was or what it is to just be loved. Reverend Dr. Mykal Beckwith, who spoke for today's reading, generated a set of practices called visioning, and one of the things that he establishes to enter that field of visioning is to just let ourselves sink into and feel into that place of love. The last set of beliefs that I want to remind us about within this Centers for Spiritual Living Practices is the idea that there is only one power, one presence, one life, which must be who I am. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. The community spiritual leader, Reverend Edward Vaughan, he came and spoke at Seattle Center for Spiritual Living. And he talked about a time when he was in Indonesia and I think it was Bali. And he talked about how a religious leader there invited a meditation practice. And it was about a mantra. It was about repeating it. And Reverend Edward Vaughan spoke about leaning into those words from Dr. Ernest Holmes. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. And he talked about this mantra as something that you would say 70 times. And so at this service that he led, he engaged us in that practice. And he had us say that. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. So you might be getting the notion that I've got homework for us. The homework is that over the course of a day, try to repeat that mantra. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. And you can get it in your weekly materials from Center for Spiritual Living via your email. And it can also be put up somewhere on our Facebook feed. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. And the invitation is to say it 70 times during the course of a day. 70, why 70? Well, the notion in Hebrew theosophy, in the philosophy and the theology, was the notion of 7 being the complete, the fulfillment. So the notion of 70 times is that we're really getting it. We're really letting ourselves try it on. So I talked about the title being Living in the Question. What is Spirit's highest idea of itself as my life? Living in that question is the starting point for visioning. Once we allow ourselves to settle in to the notion of being loved, of being beloved, I think back to the birth of my 2 daughters. And just as they were, for me, they were just so beloved. Take a moment and just think about when you see a little baby, isn't that baby just absolutely lovable? We don't look at it and say, oh, it really should have this, or it should have that, or it should have this. We see that little baby, we just think, aren't you perfect? Let ourselves imagine going back and just looking at ourselves as little babies and thinking, aren't we just perfect? So that's another homework assignment. When you look in the mirror, allow yourself to sink back into seeing a little baby and just being awed by the perfection of that baby. For no matter what the circumstances were that brought that baby into the world, that baby, upon its arrival, was perfect. Now, in answering that question, what is Spirit's highest idea of itself in my life? In my life, I want to contrast the spiritual notions of visualization and visioning. Way back, long before the pandemic, our practitioner, amazing Stephanie Scranton, had us conduct a practice of creating visioning boards. And she went out and she got all these boards, and she brought these magazines, and then she led us through this kind of spiritual review and this spiritual practice, and then she let us go to town, taking images and putting them together, and then establishing these visioning boards, these visualizations. Now, visualization is a beautiful practice to engage in. So often, when we have situations coming up, we know what we want as an alternative. When we have a problem, when we know, hey, I'm not feeling very well, we know that we want to feel well. When we have a pain at that point in our back that just won't go away, or that thing in the shoulder that's just cricky and we just want it gone, we know that we want it gone. We have a clear idea in mind. We have a clear idea in our body what it is that we want. Visualization is about opening ourselves to what we want that might be different from what we have. And one of the things about spiritual mind treatment and some of the spiritual practices that we have are that we have our life, but we also have a life that is bigger than what we currently have. We're willing to live in the possibility of that bigger life. We're willing to open our mind to that. And we can set our sight on that. I've spoken before, you might be sick of the story, but the notion when I learned about skiing, that it's most successful when you look for where you want to go and the skis will let you get there. As long as I looked to my feet, I always ended up on the ground because I was looking at the ground. Because there was no place else I could go. But when I look where I'm going, how many of us, when we're driving, we look where we want to be? We don't get into our car and just look at the steering wheel. If we got into our cars and just looked at the steering wheel, how well do you think that would turn out? You know, Mykal and I watch a lot of adventure action movies. And there are these driving activities. Jason Bourne is a great example. Jason Bourne can take a car and he can get anywhere. He's going up and down stairs. He is all over the place. There's a scene in the second Matrix where the leader tells him, you know, get onto the highway. And they're like, you always told us that the highway was certain death. And he's like, well, let's just hope I was wrong. If you're driving, you have to look at where you're going. With the notion of visualization, we are looking at where we are going. And that is a great spiritual practice. There is nothing to be discounted or pushed aside. The prospect that I would have us consider is, with the notion of visioning, we are letting go of what our ego tells us. We are letting go of what society says we should want. And again, if anyone has been on a computer, and if anyone's ever ordered anything on the computer, you may notice that there's something magical, and it's actually called an algorithm. There are algorithms that get set in place that watch what it is that we look at, what it is that we buy, and then it presents it to us again 100 different ways. Has anyone ever noticed that? You look at something and suddenly then that is advertised. It keeps showing up in all different kinds of settings. You're on Facebook and along the side, there are ads there. You're on YouTube and all of a sudden there are these things that come up. They come up with brilliant algorithms to be paying attention to what it is that we look at, and then it takes us back there. If we didn't buy it the first time, it's going to make sure that we have an opportunity to think about it a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. I remember when the whole notion of masks came out. There are many more ads for masks now that didn't exist in 2019. How many people remember seeing ads for masks in 2019? One of the things that I heard about visualization, and it was a great metaphor, is that visualization is a little bit like a copy machine. We see things that we want, and it's about letting that come into our lives. We see that this person has that, we like that, we want that. The notion of visioning, and with the song Be Thou My Vision, it's about letting go of some of that control. Now when I say let go of control, how do people feel? Do you just feel relaxed and at ease? Let go of control. It's like, hell no! I worked hard for control. What are you asking me? I'm really good at control. I've become very skilled at it. Thank you. Visioning is an opportunity to let that go. It's an opportunity to let our very active egos, and I'm not meaning ego in like that big, like you're a big ego and you know there's something wrong with that. I'm someone who's a real advocate for ego. I like to have a part of my personality that takes things and makes them into a routine so that I can do things like go to the bathroom. I can do things like get myself a snack with my diabetes, I have a part of the ego that just shuts down. And I don't like the outcomes when it just shuts down. I don't like becoming unconscious and passing out. I just don't like it. It's not a lot of fun waking up. And in the background, there's a part of me that's processing. My bedroom is filled with people. My bedroom is filled with people that are trying to bring me back into consciousness. And there's a part of me that really wants to come back into consciousness. That's my ego. So I'm a big fan of ego. I don't think ego is an evil thing. I think ego is a valuable tool on our tool belts. I mean, like I said earlier, we all think that baby is adorable. But if that baby was baby-like its whole life, we would not have as much patience and as much adoration for it. The notion of visioning is about leaning back into that believed in brilliance that is bigger than any of us can imagine. Visualization. What is it? What is Spirit's highest vision? Highest idea of itself as me? What does the universe see possible as me? What does the universe see possible as you, as each of us? What is it? There's a peace that can rise up. There's the word generativity, creativity. I know that Reverend Pamela has purchased canvases. And I know that when she purchases the canvas, she does not have an instantaneous idea for each canvas, for each thing of what is going to come forward. That action of painting, that action that Stephanie Scranton, that she opens up and designs come through her, creativity comes through her. I know that Reba gets onto this group and this group is like asking questions. She doesn't go on there saying, I'm going to answer this question, I'm going to address this. These questions get posed and she feels called that she knows something and she can bring guidance, she can bring light, she can shine something that wasn't previously understood. She can bring clarity. She can be a vehicle through which greater clarity comes into the world. We each have ways through which more of Spirit can express. So a question to consider related to that process of visioning and visualization is, how do we discern between our own personal agendas and what it is that Spirit is longing to bring into the world? Be thou my vision. That song, that old Irish tune, is about opening to more rather than just what I name and rather than what I call forward. So maybe just the action of listening to a song that opens us up, like Be Thou My Vision, can be an inspiration to allow for Spirit's agenda rather than my own agenda. And again, please hear that I celebrate that we have an ego, that we have agendas, that we have things that we want to accomplish. This is not about putting those down, but rather it's about that there is more possible. The second point that I'd like us to consider is the notion that we can have our curiosity as a way of being in the world. Dr. Reverend Mykal Beckwith talked about that there's a problem, and the problem may behind that problem we may have questions. Well, why is this happening? And that those questions reveal answers, and that those answers reveal ways of being in the world. The proposal here, the second point that I'd ask us to lean into, is that we can allow curiosity to be a way of being. Questions open us to something new. Questions can place us into a condition of receptivity. When we ask what is Spirit's highest means of expressing itself in our lives, maybe there is something that we had not considered. Maybe there are options that open up to us that we did not imagine for ourselves. When I was a little kid, I was struck at a pretty early age about the idea of becoming a priest, because I really valued what I saw my parish priest offering. I saw him as this incredibly loving expression. And that was my highest and best idea. But in the Catholic tradition, where I grew up, there was only one way to be a priest. And I also had a notion that I wanted to be a dad. I also had a notion that I wanted kids. I had a notion that I could be a good dad. And those two possibilities were mutually exclusive in my life. I couldn't be a priest and I couldn't be a dad. At least I wasn't supposed to. I mean, I suppose that there are a number of priests who are actually dads, but they're not necessarily daddies, and they're not necessarily taking care. They've kind of gone rogue, you might say. Sometimes our dreams show us that we have to go rogue to achieve what it is that we want. When I met Mykal, Mykal was engaged in classes with the science of mind and learning about it. And he told me about one of the classes. It was 13 weeks long. 13 weeks! I thought, oh my God, I could never spend 13 weeks doing something. He was on another thing. It was what, a year long, or? So, I looked at what he was doing and I'm like, I couldn't do that. Yet after spending some time with him at the Center for Spiritual Living, they offered that one course, that 13-week course, they offered it over a series of weekends. And it was like a series of weekend retreats, and I thought, I could do that. So what was possible came forward. Sometimes being curious about things. Opens us up to things. My work as a school psychologist, when I first heard about it, I kind of didn't like it, because the notion was to find out what was wrong and try to fix it. But I found that I was able to take it on, and instead of finding out what was wrong, thinking the wrong was in a kid, it was about that was wrong, everything about the supports for that kid. that special education isn't about fixing the kid. Special education is about fixing how we deliver services to a child. It's about breaking apart a system that may say that there's a disability or that there's something wrong. It's that we have ways of learning that are not supported by the way that instruction is delivered. It's been really important for me to be a counter voice to some of the basic notions. Your child has a disability. To be able to say, your child learns differently than the way that the school system is set up. Your child is a magnificent, wise, brilliant being. And we have not found the way through our school system to magnify that and to glorify that and to give that celebration. Asking the questions, living in those questions, lets us take apart the things that we see. Living in the questions, why do we live in a society where police are able to stand on a person's neck and they get away with it, carte blanche? Those questions can drive how it is that we move and act in the world. When we see something in front of us, we can ask questions rather than just looking at it. So I guess that's the way it is. When we see things, it may make us ask, what can I do? How can I be in the world to bring change? How can I be the means through which Spirit takes action? The third point that I want us to think about is a notion called collective evolution. Sometimes science of mind feels very focused on the individual, and that's kind of where the beginnings of the teaching started. It's like, change your thinking, change your life. There's a word, solipsistic, and it's the notion that I am the center of my universe. Has anyone ever encountered someone who thinks of themselves as the center of their universe? And when we're in the presence of that person who sees himself at the center of the universe, what kind of feelings do they generate in us? Do they generate feelings of awe and adoration? Sometimes that's what they seem to be seeking. Science of mind teachings can start us at changes in our individual lives. Sometimes the notion of ending up in heaven was about that notion of I as an individual live a good life, and after I've lived my good life, I get to go to heaven. Mykal and I have been watching a show called The Good Life, or The Good Place. And the premise of The Good Place is that these not very good people end up in heaven. And they're a little bit surprised by it. And in fact, they actually realize that they aren't the people that heaven thinks they are. The notion being that we are all individuals working for our individual betterment. or our individual reward. With the idea of collective evolution, we aren't just here to manifest our personal desires. What if we are here to manifest a spiritual awakening for the whole planet? There is a term in Buddhism that upon death, a person may be a bodhisattva if they come back, if they return, if they've met enlightenment. The outcome, the highest outcome for Buddhist practices is that enlightenment. That the enlightened being is not just satisfied with their own personal enlightenment, but they return. The bodhisattva returns so that enlightenment becomes available to all of humanity. And so it isn't just becoming the Buddha. The bodhisattva longs for enlightenment for all. Our center has used visioning for what we as a community can become. Centers for Spiritual Living has engaged visioning, has a visioning core, so that Centers for Spiritual Living can become a signpost for a greater awakening throughout the world. What if in that daily question of what is Spirit's highest idea of itself as my life? What if it's as we ask that question, as we practice that, as we practice, there's only one life, that life is God's life, that life is perfect, that life is my life now. What if we allow to infiltrate into that we start to have less of an I, them, a you, me relationship, and we start to think of the us. If we let go of our attachment to I, me, my, and we embrace a bigger picture of our. Season 3 of The Good Place starts to ask that question a little bit more. There's an incidental character who answers one of the main character's questions. Why have I been like this? And she answers, why have I been like this? Just me-centered, me-focused. To say that, well, maybe your you wasn't really cared for. And it's a fundamental first step in humanity. To move beyond that self-caring, that self-ego, moving on to something bigger. That collective evolution. So, I'm going to just have us finish up with knowing that we can ask a higher question. We can ask that on a daily basis. We can live in a state of curiosity. And we can remain open to experiences, not only as individuals, but as members of a larger community. We can let go of a notion of individual enlightenment and individual fulfillment to an idea of collective, of something bigger, beyond our wildest imaginations, into something greater. So to conclude, I am going to invite an affirmation. My life embodies
My life embodies
Spirit's highest idea
Spirit's
highest idea
of itself
of itself
as us.
as us.
Our lives embody
Our lives embody
Spirit's highest idea
Spirit's highest idea
of itself
of itself
as us.
as us.
And finally, our lives embody
Our lives embody
Spirit's highest idea
Spirit's highest idea
of itself
of itself
as us.
as us.
And so it is. Okay?
me.
Yes. But you watch it.
I want to thank everyone who has joined us today, either on Zoom or Facebook or live. Live, that's a unique, a wonderful feeling, to join live. And hopefully, in the not too far future, we will have more people live. And so, knowing that that there is only one life, and that life is God's life, and that life is perfect, and that life is my life, that life is your life, that life is the life of every person in this universe. That life is here and now. And so, I give thanks for everyone who's ever attended Northern Light Spiritual Center, or been a part of it in any way. And so if you'd like to donate, you can donate with going to our website, which is northernlightspiritualcenter.com, and hit the donate button. And your donation goes to many different ways. We tithe to different areas. We tithe to the Centers for Spiritual Living, the home office. We tithe to it's called Baby Watoto, who care for these babies that are basically kind of thrown away in Africa. We tithe to UNICEF for a focus on the children. And it helps keep the lights on here so that we can maintain a sacred space for people to come and share in community. And so we will be here next week. But don't forget, next week we skip forward an hour. It's been usually the first weekend. I don't know why it got changed, but I double checked to make sure, and it's next weekend we move forward. And also on the 14th we will have our annual meeting after Reverend Pamela's talk. And so next week we will be here.
21st?
Same, huh?
21st I speak.
Yes.
We said 14th was our annual meeting.
Well, 14th is we zoom forward.
Yes.
Okay. And 21st, I thought it said following, anyway, oh well. Okay, now, back where I was. So I guess that's it. So if you would like to join us for any meeting, that will be happening on Zoom, not on Facebook. So you can click into the Zoom link. And so in this time, I give thanks for knowing that there is that one life, for living as that one life, and that life is perfect, that life is God's life, that life is my life, that life is all life. And knowing that in this moment, we can call to ourselves. We can go within and ask the questions we need to ask. And ask that still small voice within, that divine presence that lives in each and every one of us. What is the divine's idea for our perfect life? So with that, I give thanks for this day. I give thanks for life.